Okay, so we have this black cherry burl. This came from right next to that one. There probably will be about 5 nests from this burl. But this was the best. And that's not too bad because I'm in need of quite a few smaller bowls right now. I have quite a few as I'm headed into the Christmas season. Okay, I have Powermatics at my house. This is kind of the baby Powermatic, so I feel very at home with this tool. So back when they were designing the 3520B, the fellow who is the chairman of Powermatic in the United States was at Acme Tool Crib in Fargo, and I traded a box elder bowl for a jet lathe. And it was really a nice bowl. It was a small lathe, but still, I like that kind of dealing. Yes? Okay, so some variety, if it's box elder or basswood that I want to keep very light, I'm going to use a sprayed lacquer because I don't want it to darken. Generally, these I'm using teak oil, so I'm going to use a chip brush to soak in as much as I can right on the lathe after I finish turning it. And then I'm going to probably the next day soak it again. And then after it has a chance to dry so that the bottom is flat, and you understand that about green wood, that it's going to be moving. And so I need to wait. If I've turned them fairly thin, that's going to be only a couple weeks. I'm often getting stuff ready for a show, so it's in and out of my microwave, a stack of them at a time. You know, a stack of 8, a minute 30 seconds. So they're hot to the touch. That will kind of move them along. But then I'm going to flatten the bottom. I'm going to put another coat of teak oil. When that's dry, I'm going to buff it. And then I'm going to wait for a couple of weeks while the dryer evaporates. And then I have learned that I can spray lacquer. And one of the things that's a bit of a pain to me is that some of the shops and galleries that cover my stuff, they want it shiny. And it's kind of a, but a Danish oil to get it to that gloss is 17 coats buffed between, and it's kind of like, Lord, I don't have that much time. So a couple of coats, 2 to 3 coats of spray lacquer is a very quick way, and most of mine are decorative. So that works. Yep. I don't. It seems to have enough solvent in it, and I want quite a bit of solids. I want all the solids I can get. Some of it is a bit spalted, and so it is soaking it in, and then I might give it some more coats, but I do not feel I need to do that. If I were using tongue oil, I used Deft oil for years, and that was tongue oil and varnish. So I want something pretty high solids. I just bought some half and half, which is a tongue oil and citrus oil. I'm going to try that. I'm not real pleased with my finishes right now, and I'm looking. I put some Odie's oil on some of my waterproof stuff because Mahoney's. I will wake up every night at midnight for the rest of my life trying to get some sort of shine on those bowls, and it's just never going to happen. So, to me, finishes, especially for my ale bowls that I drink from, I don't have the ticket to that yet. If you've got some ideas, I would love to hear it. I'll give you $1. Okay, so we have mounted this on. I have a couple small cracks, but it's pretty good shape. It took me a while changing centers and so on to get this in a good place. Is the sound still okay with my mask? Okay. So let's, I did not check to see if I was on the right. Careless of me, sorry. Okay, look, I'm going to drop that down. So this is the most common cause of injuries among woodturners, that you're going to start an unbalanced bowl too fast. So you really want to be cautious. Back in the old shops days, school shop days, their variable speed drills often went to 0 each time. Was a pretty clever idea, but then you have to crank up the speed from nothing. Burl bowls tend to be pretty unbalanced. They're a pretty random thing. Okay, so I've got basically an Ellsworth grind on here. Maybe I can show this to you. Okay, can you see that? So in a way, it has a triple bevel to it. Can you see that? So the first one, the main bevel, is a 55-degree. This is actually a Tormek design. Glenn Lucas has a nice system where he talks about that. And then the Tormek also allows me to put a second bevel on, and then just freehand on the grinder. I'm even taking this off. You don't need all that stuff, but on your bowl gouges, it would make sense. Go to your coarsest wheel and just take a bunch of this out of the way, right here. Because on the inside of your bowl, at the bottom, this is going to be digging into the bottom of your bowl and bruising it, because the bottom is not flat, the bottom is rounded. So you need to get rid of some of this to do the inside. Okay? So I'm going to just show you, remind you, you probably know this. There's a little thing that I do that scares some people sometimes, is that very often at this point I'm going to go. It's not the best thing for your bearings, but your face is kind of valuable too. So I think just to get everything well seated here is a pretty valuable thing. So what I'm doing, I'm starting out with a pull cut. So are you familiar with these ideas? So a pull cut, I think 45, 45. So this is at this angle about 45 degrees. It's approximately so 45, and this way from my body about 45. Okay? It is a bevel rubbing cut, but it's not a push cut. So here would be the push cut, over here, more flat. And this is what I taught people for years, and I think the pull cut is a much more natural feeling cut and can be very aggressive. So, once I get this a bit rounded, and I think before I go too far, I'm just going to rough out the size of my base. This one had quite as I was making this, it had quite a piece that tore out here, that there was who knows if that was a place where a deer ate off the bark or something, but certainly there was a place where the wood was not bonded well to itself. And so I'm going to have to go a little bit further to get to where that goes, and then I'm going to put it on a 3-inch chuck. At our club meeting last Saturday, somebody said, stick with one brand of chucks. And I said, no. Every chuck manufacturer has blind spots where their screws go. And so they skip big bits of diameter from one to the next. So Nova now has a chuck that they have drilled a hole right through the chuck wall, the ring, to put their screw. But before that, it went from 2 inches to 4 inches. when 3 inches is the magic number, Vic Mark does the same thing. So I like 2 different sets because I have 7 sizes of chucks in a row that as I'm coring, I'm going to choose the biggest size chuck or the smallest size chuck that will hold what I need because I like small bottoms on my bowls. I don't want a great big heavy bottom. I think it looks very clunky. So I'm going to hold it as with as small a chuck as I can that has enough holding power. And that means not jumping to 2 inches when I need 3 inches. I really need that 3-inch size. Okay, so here's where my diameter is going to go. I've got to take a little more down. Oh, there's. Okay, I think I'm getting pretty close to there. So this is a kind of dangerous thing. I think many of you know how to do this, but we're lining up one side. Okay, so I'm getting a ring that I want, but if this side touches, it will come at me in an alarming way. Gotcha? So I'm just lining that up. I'm not touching with it. So then I'm going to okay, there's my flange. And then the way I choose to do my designs, that I'm going to have a foot. So if I'm doing a thin bowl, I like a foot because it means that I can come down and I can keep the sides parallel and thin, and at the bottom I'm that same 1/8 inch or 3/16, and so that bit of the bottom is kind of like a ring that helps it to be flat. Okay, so we don't have too far to go here now. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look here. So we have some flats here. Are you able to see that? So obviously we've got to go a bit further here and here, but it means that we're fairly centered. I'm very often changing the centers here. It's one of the reasons I hold it between centers instead of on a faceplate, because I'm constantly manipulating. Even as I started this, I'm using my finger over here to line up the bark at the top. You see what I'm doing here? This isn't about how big the diameter it is, but that it sits in a way that's level. Because if I have one side that's much higher, it looks bad. So I see that my design idea is that I'm kind of in the middle between chaos and order. I think a burl is a pretty chaotic thing. Would you agree with that? Not even grain direction, it's going all over. And if we add some cracks, some bark, everything is kind of chaos. But let me tell you, if the top is really off, it's a bit too much chaos. And if the outside isn't smooth, that's a bit too much chaos. So we're certainly bringing some order to that chaos. But I think, a lot of my bowls go to Minnesota lake cabins because I think it really kind of fits that kind of mode. But if they buy them for their home in the city, it's like bringing a Hobbit village into your linear, stainless, marble, everything. It's a bit of the creation. It's a bit of disorder. And I think beauty is often kind of taking on something that is so ordered in every way, and softening it and adding some earthiness to it. So I've got a few small cracks here. If I were working in my own shop, I would be busy with my super glue here, filling cracks. So I don't want that. I don't want that to be visible. So usually I'm using dust. I have really quite a wonderful dust collection of light colored, medium colored, walnut. Sometimes I even use coffee. It's kind of a little in-joke, but it also is a good dark color. But generally, I'm not trying to highlight my cracks. You know, I could use malachite or turquoise or something like that. You either have to hide it or, bring it out. But now, my basic idea about turning a bowl is that I want to go from big chips to small chips. So far, we've made some pretty big chips here. And this is even more true on a regular log, that as the log is turning, two places on the log, we're cutting uphill. You all know about this, cutting uphill. But if you're cutting a big chip, it has some beam strength. I'm borrowing that from some engineers. Enough beam strength to break off into the wood. Here and down around here. So I don't care about that at first. I just need to quickly get it to round. But then when I'm getting close to round, then I'm going to slow down, take my time, and make my chips smaller and smaller. And how am I going to make my chips smaller? What are some of the things I can do to do that? Okay, so I'm not quite there yet, but I will. That's going to be my ultimate small chip, except for sandpaper, which is going to be even smaller. But at this point, so is my bowl blank more balanced than it was? So what if I doubled the speed? Then for a given movement across here, my chip would be half as big. What if I moved my cut half as quickly? That's also half as big a chip. And certainly this aggressiveness, we're going to back off. But to me, one of the most important things is that I'm going to move to a different cut. I've got a little further to go here before I get there, but a variation of the pull cut is the shearing cut. So there is a continuum from a pull cut to a shearing cut. So here's the pull cut, where I'm cutting off this corner. If I keep dropping the handle down further and further, so just watch what happens here to this cut. So here it is. Okay, and I've got a little material yet to take. But look what happens when I drop the handle. Sometimes I have to do some different things with my handles and stuff to get them out of the way, because this can often be in the way. Sometimes I have to lift the tool rest higher, because if I'm really dropping it down, this could be in the way. All right? But when we get down here like this, I'm going to drop this handle down, and maybe my cut is going to be at 80 degrees. And as we said, we could speed things up. Let's see if we can push through this shake here. Sometimes you can. You know what I mean by that? Sometimes the resonance is such that it starts shaking, but if you go up a little above that, it'll calm down again. Because you want the best speed you can. So here we're coming across here. Can you see how those shavings are getting to me much longer?
Actually, a regular piece of wood really responds a little better to that because my grain is quite it's quite fine grained here. It kind of almost granulates instead of comes off in long shavings. Okay, I'm getting a little flat. Plus, I've still got a little problem at the bottom here. So if I want to add some more curve here, so basically, what is a line? A line is the distance between 2 points. What are my 2 points? Right here when I get through so that I've got no flats, and then right at the base of the foot. But I know that I want my curve to stay alive. You know what that would mean? It means it doesn't flatten out. A curve that flattens out, it just kind of dies. So sometimes I'm just going to have to pull the bottom in or pull the top in to add some more curve here. I think the toughest bowl in the world to do is one that's 20 inches tall. And it's kind of like, how can I keep any curve alive in that? I'm probably going to have to put an OG on it and so on. But I want to keep my curve alive. Okay, so let's keep going here. I think I can keep speeding this up a bit. Handle down very low. For safety, we're always going to stop that. I still have a little more to take off here, so. If you notice that a burl is much flatter across the top than a general natural edge bowl taken off a cylinder of a log, that has a deep saddle. Because this comes out of a dome, it's more flat. Okay, I think we've got a pretty nice curve going. Let's just see if we've taken off our flat spots. Okay, so Rob mentioned over here about shear scraping. So 35 years ago, I went to my first AAW symposium, and I watched John Jordan use this tool, and I watched him for about 10 seconds, and I said, what am I going to do with the 3 years that I would have been sanding? That now I can start a mission on the Zambezi River in Africa, or I could cure cancer. But if you'd like to sand, avert your eyes, because this is just such a magic thing, and I think many of you know it. But we're going to use a regular skew scraper, so it looks like a skew chisel, but it just has one bevel on it. And it's freshly ground, so it's got a burr here on the top. That burr lasts about a minute, so it's going to need to be sharpened often. And what we're going to do with it, we're going to do a very extreme shearing cut with it. So instead of a regular scraper where we're lifting the handle and cutting a bit downhill, this one we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to rotate it up to about 60 degrees or so. So here's how we're going to do this. You got a good view on that. So here it is flat, but we're going to bring it up like this. We're going to be very cautious of where the point is, because that will absolutely destroy this bowl. But now we're getting just lovely small shavings. They're not breaking off into the end grain at all. And on a regular natural edge bowl, it's pretty tough for us to go much above the saddle, I call the saddle. But here, because it's quite flat, we can go up higher. So we're going to go right up to the top. You're keeping it very close into your body. A lot of pressure down on the tool rest. Okay. So if you came up and looked here, I've got a few places I may still do a little gluing. Generally, I would do that at this point, but I'm moving on. But we've got some small cracks here that we would probably fix at this point. But I think the regular surface is quite nice, and 150 grit sandpaper would be more than sufficient. You know, let's say 150 or even 180 to 220. And then we're going to do one other thing with this. This angle, I find, works very fine for my chuck. I'm going to just get that a little narrowed. Okay, so I think that's going to be sufficient. Got any questions at this point while I switch this over? I know you folks are at lots of different places on your turning journey. Let's see. You see where? Here.
I'm not quite even across the top. So a very good conversation. Jerry over here is actually pretty far along as a one-way coring system guy. And his friend Mike Hunter, some of you know about Hunter Tools. Mike Hunter has a new cutter for the one-way that really makes that even nicer. So the one-way, if you're just taking flat top bowls and making lots of smaller bowls out of it, the McNaughton system is not a good choice. It's too undependable, kind of. But I'm often working 4 or 5 inches away from here before I even start cutting. So the offset, because of my bark and the unevenness of the burl, to me makes the McNaughton system a better choice for this. And it does also give me quite a lot of flexibility about shapes. So sometimes I'm making them very deep, and even with an angle like this. Whereas I think the one-way and the woodcut are both somewhat standard brands, and you could mass produce them. I think Jerry has done lots of those. Glenn Lucas. There are lots of people that are doing that. There are people you can buy the cord bowls on American Woodturner because people have got a good system and they're making a lot of them. But I don't find they work very well for a natural edge burl because the top is so uneven. But since they don't make them anymore, maybe it doesn't really matter that much. I think they may make them again. But this is kind of how I think a woodturner works. I decide that this natural edge stuff kind of suits me. I'm as far from the temperament of a segmented turner as you could find. Okay? I've done too much measuring in other times of my life. I love that I don't have to measure a thing with this. So I met a guy at the symposium who is the treasurer for AAW, and we were looking at some segmented pieces, and he said he's in an accounting firm. And I said, so you must really like those segmented turnings. And he said, I hate segmented turning. So I said, I bet you're not really doing pure accounting. And he said, how did you know? You know, I'm the only one in my firm that does training. And I'm retired, but they still make me come. So there is a way in which when you find your right track, it's going to match your temperament in a good way. And this is kind of mine. I love that I'm kind of dealing. It's like going to a farm sale with my grandpa to go out and buy a Burl. You know, it's kind of out in the woods, and it's talking smack, telling lies and talking big is what he used to say. But so if you can find that place that kind of suits you, you're off and running. It's a great time. So here we're doing some coring. So this is called the Stewart system. This dates back to the very beginning of this. The most bowls I've ever gotten was 10, and it was with this. But it was a Burl that was like a volcano, and I could just keep cutting them like this. But generally, we're going to go to the McNaughton system, which allows us to make some curves. I love using this. It's got a carbide tooth. My high-speed steel in these McNaughton tools is precious to me. Once it's gone, it's gone. So I love that I can use carbide to go through the bark. The bark is very abrasive and a little wild. So we're going to start out this way. I'm going to actually, this is a scraper. I'm going to start it high so that I can be leaning down a little bit. Okay, so I am taking a tangent here. This is a little bit on the edge power-wise with this tool. I'm going to get some more pressure on the belt here. My 2-horsepower Powermatic, kind of up to 14 inches, and then it's a bit underpowered. So this takes a lot of power to scrape this far from the center. Okay, once I'm through the bark, I can speed this up a bit. So I'm doing some things a bit different. Mike Mahoney generally would like to cut the inside bowl out first. And it's kind of like, that's a $50 bowl. I've got a $250 bowl on the outside. What sort of accounting fool would risk the outside one for the sake of that middle one? So to me, I got to go with the outside one. It means I'm resetting the base more often, but you're going to have to do that anyway to finish those bowls. So I'm going to keep moving up through, but this is the way I'm going to start. And then I'm going to take my tool rest here. So this is kind of the heart of the McNaughton system, is these gates right here that are pretty close to the width of my cutting tools, and there is a large, medium, mini, and micro that each have a different height. And can you see that it's kind of a turret, and each one is a little higher. So each one is smaller, less reach. One of the worst things I've done at a demo is I came to a demo with only my long base to go on the tool rest and was turning on this identical one, and it was too long. And it's like, I brought my short one today. So I'm doing some things a bit different. I'm going to try to keep the tool rest in position, not tool rest, but the tailstock, as long as I possibly can, because it just gives me confidence. It means that I can work for that skinny bottom down here that I want on my bowl.
Yes. No thanks. I know. I'm always flipping it in from every direction. And so a lawyer designed that. Just like the one-way Wolverine, the new thing. A lawyer designed that so that it wouldn't come loose because it must have sometimes. And I get that. I don't want anybody to be hurt, but I want what I want. Okay, so now here, I'm going to start with the straight one. Can you see that that has had a bit of a rough time in its life? So, I mean, just think, this is a parting tool that's sometimes working out a foot from the tool rest. And so it's got, now this is not going to be tilting, but it still has this at the back to keep it in line. So at this point, I'm lining this up, and if I've bent this a few times, I may need to adjust this a bit so that it is cutting at the center line. This is not going to go so deep, but my last cuts, I really have to be very careful that they are coming right to the center of my bowl, because if they're out 8 inches and they're a little high or a little low, it's incredible torque on that steel. It's probably going to bend. Okay, so this is going to make a little wider cut. I can see, pardon? Yep. Okay, so there is a straight tool going in. I've lost my bark here. It's interesting. This is kind of predictable. So what part of the bowl would I tend to lose the bark from? It's the part that isn't a burl. So the burl has got spikes coming up through, and they hold on to the bark quite well. So this is pretty predictable, and it's okay. I prefer to keep the bark on, but sometimes it just is going to happen this way. Okay, so you really need to have a tremor to do this. Any of you can help me with this? Okay. I need to cut a little more clearance. The chips that we're gathering is always going to be a factor. So I've got to get a little more clearance here. Is this as exciting out there as it is? So some years ago, I used to do an open house in my shop to invite kind of potential students to come. And I showed people how to do this. And my friend Harvey, that eventually became my church treasurer, it's a kind of a tightwad, he came and watched, and he was so terrified, he said, I will never touch a lathe in my life. So that worked out really well for me. But it is a bit messy. Okay, I'm cutting a little more clearance here. So I'm going a little side to side, a little up and down, but this is always up against the top. Just show you a couple things here. This would be true for a lot of kinds of turning. You see how my tool rest is aligned with the cutting tool? If this tool rest was going this way, where I don't have very much leverage on that cam, this would be bending like crazy. So I need to keep this as stiff as possible by having this aligned so that this structure right here can hold quite well, because this is a lot of strain that's going on here. Okay, I've gone about halfway down on the side. You can see that it, I would say 500. On my more powerful lathe, I would tend to have been slowing it down at that point. But it seemed actually I got more torque out of it by taking it up a little higher. But certainly, if I was pushing a steady push, I would have locked it up constantly because all of a sudden it lets go and then takes too deep a bite. So in a way, this is just taking lots of little tiny bites that don't go so deep as to catch. Okay, so I think I probably done about as much as I can do with this in place. Maybe I'll try one more thing. So here is the next circle. Let's see if I can get that in there. I would love to design a little tailstock right here that I could curl around. I think would be a cool kind of invention. In a way, the one way kind of has a bit of that shape to it, probably. Well, I can go quite a bit further. It's right here that I can't. And there are times I've taken this off. I just would love to get just a little more, because there's no doubt that having the tailstock up against just gives me lots of stability here. So you guys very likely can find better ways to do all these things. So in a way, all a demonstrator can do is, this is the best that I've come up with in my feeble little life. Okay, and hopefully we learn something from it. So here's my next round. This tends to be a really good shape for me. Do you have a few tools that are just pretty sweet for you? You kind of go to them really often. This is kind of that tool for me. Okay, so generally I'm working with my Powermatic 3520 with the head about here. So I'm working out here a little further. I'm not too worried about this. I'm not going to have to go too far. But many of my processes, I'm working out here. A true bowl lathe, you just have to be able to work off the end of the lathe. That makes sense to you? You know that? Okay, so here I'm going. This is the medium tool. So I'm going in this second place here. I'm going to, since I'm working in there far, I'm going to reach out here and I'm going to lift this up a little bit so that I can, when I get to the bottom, now one of the things I can do, after I get started here, I may be able to bring this up again. So let's see. This turned out to be a little drier burl than I thought. That happens. I'm going to get this up as close as I can. So the less overhang I have, the better. And I'm going to do a little cutting on the outside edge because I've been working with straighter tools and I need to get a little more curve in them. This is great. The whole tool, the whole lathe shakes with my tremor. It's perfect. So one of the things that happens is that this keeps shifting in the crack. So if it gets loud, I'm just kind of getting off that edge so that I'm not putting quite so much pressure on this. This is a lot of tool pressure. And what's going on right there? There may be a little piece that's come loose in there of the wood. Okay, there. I guess I was at a wrong angle. Okay, let's come out a little further. I was just getting ready to pull some chips out of there. See, I believe that the best demonstrator is going to make as many mistakes as possible so that we can learn how we overcome them. Because basically all I have to do is put a little, curve this to another place on this, and I generally will be on just fine again. Probably should have cut that a little. I probably also misjudged that bottom is a little more crumbly than I thought. Is it? Thank you. We go in just a little bit further, we can bring the headstock up against again. So we've got it's all right. It's being a little cantankerous here. Often when I'm working with my students, it's kind of like, so do what you need to make this quieter. So in this case, it means I need to more carefully find it in the middle of this cut. But very often, you know, I've got a couple people coming to my shop next week that have been working with carbide, and it's kind of like, I want to cut my bowls thinner. And I said, I'm gonna show you how to cut quieter, which is basically to say, if you're lining up your bevel carefully and putting as little pressure on the top as possible, it will be quieter, and that's going to allow you to cut it thinner. It's about pressure and quietness. So let's try this. We've got some cracks at the top that are part of this out of my Burl. Okay. We're going to true it up a bit with this. Very grabby in there. Back to my white handle. I'll have to start with it out here first. So if I think all the coring tools have one quite big challenge is that they tend to make their bowls all the same size. I don't mean diameter, I mean shapes. So sometimes it is a bit of a challenge to, and I often add an OG or something like that to give a little more variety to my nest. There's part of my problem. All right, didn't know it was there. I think wood turning is a pretty well suited to people who like to solve problems. And I mean that design problems as well. Tomorrow I'm going to show my loon here and kind of working through the process of having an idea and then kind of working through obstacles to it. I think it's what's very satisfying about wood turners is that you probably can create something that hasn't been done before, and that usually is correcting your mistakes. Okay. Big tremors, big tremors. Okay, so part of what was happening before, I was getting some chips stuck. So we're not going to go too far before we pull those out. Okay, didn't quite get all of them out of there. Okay. I can see that on that one, we jarred this just a little bit. You see how far away we're working from the tool rest. You can see why this is a bit of a challenge. I'm just going to pull this out and see how we're doing with the center. Okay. So a lot of these things would be a little more difficult with that new model that you have to put everything through here. So you can tell people you saw some commando wood turning going on, where none have dared to go before. Okay, I want to show you something. There are some people who have put lasers to show. I think with so much vibration that happens on this, I've had some events. It's just moving too much. I have a Trent Bosch operation for hollowing, and that works quite well. But this has a lot of vibration. So this is I mark the distance. So can you see that the cutting point is right in line with the Can you see that? There you go. All right. So it means that if I measure from here to my handle, 12 3/4, that right here, I can measure in line to see how far down I am. So this is generally enough for me. Probably 1 out of 50 I go through the bottom, but yep. We're still a little. No, we're still. I think what I really need is just a bunch of you guys right up here around me, encouraging me, correcting me. Getting close. That is really. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're close. We're caught up in this curve a bit. It isn't moving. Okay. I can see it a bit loose in there, but Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. Yep. So that was a lot harder than I wanted to put you guys through, or myself. So let's clean up the inside. We've got just a couple minutes yet. So one of the advantages to this at this point, so one of the things that was happening is there was a kind of weakness, a fault line in there, that this was shifting, is my guess. But as you can see, we're a good ways toward making our next bowl. So when I'm working in my shop, when things go better, you've seen me struggling a bit, you know, I can do a couple of these nests in a day, and I think a mistake I made with this is harder and drier than I thought it was. It is. So, but I think that's one of the things about if I wanted to have a jigged up kind of woodworking job that you just keep doing the same thing all the time, I would choose something else. This is a little more mano a mano at times, and the McNaughton probably more than the one way, and a Burl more than a straight piece of wood. So that I think my temperament, although I might deny it right now, is still to take on a challenging piece to find. It's challenging to find a Burl. When you've got it, it's challenging to know how to best use it. And sometimes it's a bit mano a mano. It would have been a lot easier for me to just hollow that and not give birth to a child. So maybe I've experienced some of the first labor pains of my life. Mary Sue, what do you think about that? It's a start. It's a start, but kudos to you all.